Hello, everybody, and happy Friday. Full disclosure, this week's video is being recorded really late at night, and I'm very tired. I worked all day, and I'm exhausted. But I have to record it so that you guys have something to watch next week. This week has been, again, like I said earlier, full disclosure, this week has been really hard for me, mental health-wise, but I am back on track for the most part, and will do my best to continue to provide you guys with the information that I said I would provide you with. Okay, so today's lesson, just like last week, we are going to continue on in our series of art fundamental lessons. And this week's lesson is going to be about the elements of art. Now, when you hear that, you're probably thinking, oh my god, what is he talking about? Elements of art, there aren't elements of art, blah 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 blah. And I would stand to reason that there are multiple different ways that you can perceive the term elements of art. But in this instance, I am teaching you guys the practical elements of art. Not the thematic elements, not the elements within elements, just the practical baseline. What are the visual elements that make up a piece of artwork? So, let's get started. There are currently, because art is an ever-changing force, there are currently 7 elements of art. All 7 elements provide different things. So we have line. Let me switch brushes because this one's kind of big. Okay. We have line. We have, I'm going to put spaces in between so I can write the definitions out for you guys. We have line, shape, color, value, form, space, and lastly we have texture, which I don't have a lot of room to write, so I'm going to write it really small down here. Okay, so those are our elements in a nutshell. There are 7 of them, like I said, and each one serves its own purpose. When you hear me talk about these elements, you'll hear me say my main 3 go-tos when I'm teaching is I will talk a lot about these 3. These 3 are my go-tos to create a, 1, aesthetically pleasing piece, and 2, a piece that is at least cohesive within itself. Shape language is such a big part of doing any kind of cartooning and animated work. It is such a huge part of that when you use it, it kind of makes sense. When you hear shape language, you'll hear it a lot when people talk about character design within animated films, especially animated Disney films. Disney leans very heavily into the shape language of characters. If they're big and round, they're very kind and soft and jovial. If they're very long and rectangular, they're kind of stoic and knowledgeable because they're sturdy. If they're triangular or have like lots of points, they're very evil or sinister. You'll hear that a lot. But currently, with our current wave of character designers, people are breaking away from that very frequently and using very sharp shapes for characters that are really nice and sweet and kind, and using big round shapes or big blocky shapes for people that are evil and sinister and up to no good. So you have to think of what shape will fit this character's personality. That's all you have to think of when it comes to that kind of stuff. So, at this point in the video, I am not going to waste any time. I'm going to jump right into the definitions and showing you guys what those definitions are in our example sketchbook page. Alright? So, line. A line is a point moving... What? I'm sorry. I got these from the teaching curriculum that I use. Or like co-use with one of my coworkers. It's a whole thing. And it doesn't make sense. Anyway, a line is a connection between 2 points. let's put it that way. A line is a connection between 2 or more points. Lines may vary in dimension, so they can be 2D or 3D. They can be descriptive, they can be implied, or they can even be abstract. So lines can vary, is essentially the definition. A line is a connection between 2 points that can vary. Sorry, let me not make it that close. Connection, and I do apologize for my handwriting. It can get a little hard to read. Let me write that right. 2 or more points. And lines can be used in a variety of ways to create your shape, to create your form, to separate your space, to create a texture. It just depends on how you use it, right? So on our practice page over here, right here, I'm going to show you guys each of the different types of lines and kinds of lines, and how they fit into that. Well, this is a 2D line versus a 3D line kind of thing, right? So we have 9 different types of lines, and because this is digital, I could use the tools to show you how to do it digitally, but I'm going to do it traditionally, so the lines are probably not going to be perfectly straight. They'll be a little shaky, so please forgive me for that one, right? So we have straight lines, we have diagonal lines, we have curved lines, we have dotted lines, we have dashed lines, we have spirals, we have zigzags, we have wavy lines, and we have squiggly lines, which is more like, there we go. So those are different types of lines. Those are not the only types of lines, but those are different types of lines that you'll see in artwork, right? The next thing is, because I brought it up, the 2D versus a 3D line. So if we take a diagonal line, just a basic diagonal line, it shows no real depth. It's just a diagonal line. Now, if we take 2 points, right? If we say this is our starting point, and we pull it out here or here, and then we connect it, that line is now going back in space. This one too. It's coming together to meet at one point. Now, I'm going to show you how it looks when I use the ruler, because the ruler does help. It's a perspective ruler, so it shows you how to do it in perspective, which is a whole other lesson for you guys, so don't worry about that. Right? So if we take this and I zoom out, and then I move these in, or actually let me move them there and there, because I want them to cross, so that you guys get a full scope. Right? Then I'll zoom back in, and I will grab my brush again. Oops. Nope. There we go. And then we can do lines crossing here. There you go. So this just straight up diagonal here is just a 2D line. Then you have a 3D line, the line that falls back in space or moves forward in space. Another good practice with 3D lines is understanding line weight. If you start your line really thick and then start to soften up as you go further back in space, I'm going to use the one because the one will show better. No, it won't. I forgot that these are cartooning brushes and they all stay the same. Anyway, if you use a brush that has tapering, if you start with a really thick line and then move into a really thin line, you kind of get that 3D effect. So when something is closer to you, the lines are going to be a lot bolder, a lot thicker. And as they fall back into space, you start losing details. So you start losing that line weight. All right? That's just something to keep in mind for later. Right? Hello? Oh, you're such a pain. There we go. Thank you. And we're clearing the layer because we're moving on to shapes. So, the next element is shapes. Shapes are, in essence, the building blocks of your artwork. So think about it like line is how you can tell detail, shape is how you can figure out and like solidify your form. When you're using clay, your clay isn't given to you in a line, right? It's given to you in a big block, a big chunk of clay. And that clay you have to shape into a different thing, into a vase, into a bowl, into a mug, into a cup, into a tray of some kind. You have to reshape that, right? So think of your line as your wireframing and your shape as your clay. Once your shape is on your wireframing, you have to start to build it into a form, right? So, shape is an element that is 2D in nature, flat and or limited to the height and width of your object. So there are several different types of shapes that we can talk about, but I'm going to write down the definition of shape. Ooh, that is not the size I was using. There we go. Element that is 2D, flat, or limited to height and width. Alright, so there are hundreds of different shapes out there. If you are really into math, you already know this, that there is an endless possibility of shapes. They're just shapes. They can be polygonal, they can be, I don't remember what rounded shapes are called, but it's polygonal and something else. If I remember it, I will put it in like the comment section maybe. But there are several different types of shapes, so we're gonna start really quick on our sketchbook page. And I will explain. I'm gonna actually start, I'm gonna put the lines back really quick. This way. You guys still have that. spiral, zigzag, wavy, squiggly. Alright. So your shapes are like super basic. You've probably learned them several times in your life, right? What is our first shape? Basic shape that we all learn. The first three shapes that we all learn as kids. Squares. It's not a perfect square, but it's a square. Triangle. Circle. And rectangle. These are the like 4 shapes that we learn all as kids. Let me know what colors these were in the comment section below, because I remember squares were red, triangles were blue, circles were yellow, rectangles were green. That's what I remember. But I know it's different everywhere, so let me know what colors your shapes were as a kid. Okay, now we start to get into the more complex shapes, which is a star. I promise you I cannot freehand a star. I try. Yeah, I do my best. Freehanding a star is really difficult. A pentagon, which, if you remember from your early math classes, pentagons are a shape with 5 points, an oval, which is an elongated circle, you know, organic. Now, when they say organic, they don't mean like a leaf or a flower, or no, they mean like the most natural shape you can possibly draw. So if you just shake it out, right, and then just take your pen and put it to the paper and just let your hand go, an organic shape. It's a shape that really doesn't have a form. That's kind of what people mean. Nope, that just looks like an E. There, that's a good one. And the last one is a trapezoid. Trapezoids are very fun. It is literally just a rectangle that somebody stretched the bottom portion of. Trapezoid. And that explains shapes. Now, we are going to move on to color. Color is something that so many people wrap themselves up in and get obsessed with. And I'm here to tell you that without your other foundations, your color means diddly. Like, it's good that you are really good at coloring, but without knowing where and how to apply those colors, it kind of falls flat on the reason for learning color. That's why I always suggest, when I have new people that want to learn, don't just jump to color theory. Don't just jump into, well, I want to know how to color better. I want to learn how to color like Jen Bartel or Matt Marlowe. I want to learn how to color like them. Figure out the black and white or just the line work first. Figure out how to create those forms and shapes with lines, and then add your color. It's kind of like making a sandwich. You can't make a sandwich without something to put your ingredients on, whether it's bread or lettuce or a tortilla or anything like that. Like, you can't just slap your ingredients. You're not going to put a glob of peanut butter and a glob of jelly on a plate and say this is a sandwich, because it's not. So, build up the outside to get to the good stuff inside. That's what I'm saying. Alright. Color is an element made of 3 properties: hue, saturation, and value. And now I hope at this point in the video you guys are starting to notice that a lot of these elements overlap and intersect with each other. They all work together in unison to create something. Right? Okay. So, like I said, color is an element. Let me write this down for you guys. An element made of 3 properties. Hue, saturation, and value. And here's what I will say about color, because a lot of people will also get themselves wrapped up in this as well. Hue and value are not the same thing. A lot of people will think that when somebody says blue, they mean like a periwinkle. Now, they are very different colors, but your hue, your saturation, and your value are 3 completely separate things that create color. All right? So, if you look over to the top left of my screen, you'll see a little tab that says HSV. HSV stands for hue, saturation, and value. When you have your saturation to 100%, you are getting 100% of that hue. When you have your value turned to 100%, you're getting 100% of that value. So, to break it down simpler, value is from black to white. It can also be known as tint and tone, but value is from black to white, no colors, no hue. There's no hue to it, just black to white. So if I move this from black and I move it over to blue, you're gonna see the saturation change, right? If I turn that down, right? If I take the saturation, you see how my, hey, move. You see how my blue is suddenly turning white? That's because I'm sucking all of that color out of my, my value. I'm sucking all the hue out. Stop it, don't be rude, right? So if I put that back on 100% and then I change my hue, it changes what color it is. So I can go red, orange, yellow, green is a very long one on digital, cyan, blue, magenta, back to red. Right? So, that is those 3 elements. They are very, very different. And they come in thousands upon thousands upon thousands upon thousands of different shades, tints, tones, all that stuff. I have a whole lesson for you guys lined up on color alone, just color. So we're going to go over to our sketchbook page and we are going to talk about the most important color groupings that you need to know, which means I have to use a brush. Okay, I'm going to use my mixing brush, which is a default brush in Clip Studio Paint. First up is your primary colors. Your primary colors. Now listen to me carefully. Your primary colors do not translate for mixing to digital. They don't, because digital works in a whole different spectrum of colors. When these things were first starting to be taught, and we haven't like fully updated ourselves to it yet. When these things were when they were first being taught, they were teaching them with pigment. They were teaching them how to do these things with pigments. So a red pigment, a yellow pigment, and a blue pigment. They were very common pigments that you could get as an artist when things were first starting up. And now we are at a point where you can get various pigments and various colors for very, very little. But we are also in an environment where we are almost majority doing work digitally. There's still a lot of people that still work traditionally, like is her name Wiley Beckett, who does some work for Magic the Gathering or Wizards of the Coast at this point. Kevin Wada, who does cover art for a lot of like big Marvel comics and such, works traditionally. I'm a Wonder, Tina, works traditionally, sometimes digitally. There's still a lot of people that will work traditionally and need to understand like pigment, right? So that's where the confusion comes in when learning digital and traditional and learning your foundations, because a lot of people want to learn their foundations and learn how to improve themselves and be better and all that stuff, but they don't want to learn how to do it traditionally, which is majority of the information that we have right now, because digital is such a new secular division of art. It didn't start that long ago. I think it's been a little over 30 years. So it's still fairly young and new and needs to be learned more. But I digress. When I say that the colors digitally do not mix, I will show you. This is called the intermediate color panel. It's a very large panel that shows you all the colors that you can mix, right? So if I take red, and I put red here, yellow, and blue, and I put blue across the bottom, you notice how it's missing green? Like there's no green. This is all like a purplish gray. You still get purples, you still get orange, you just do not get green. And that's because you can't get green without actually using green. So if I go here, I up the saturation a little bit. There you go. Now you're starting to get a full picture. With primary colors in digital, you have to add green yourself. This way you can get all your colors. You'll get your purples, your blues, your reds, oranges, yellows, yellow greens, blue greens, all that stuff, right? So, now that that's out of the way, I'm going to show you guys the most important color palettes that you need to have. Let me put this here. Oops. Put that there so I don't lose it. Most important color palettes that you need to have as a digital artist or a traditional artist, or at least to have some basic understanding of, is your primary colors, which are red, yellow, blue, and sometimes green if you're digital, right? The good thing about Clip Studio now is I think they did a thing. Yeah, they did. So they did a thing where they added a feature where you can now mix colors and get a pretty decent green. Yes. So you can get a pretty decent green, right? It's not the perfect green. Still kind of finicky a little bit in my opinion, but you can still get a green. Same with the red. You can mix the red in. For some reason it gives you orange, which I don't understand, but it gives you orange. You can mix the blue on top of the red and you'll get like a greenish red kind of color. Like it's not purple. Well, it starts to become purple when you add more blue, but it's still new, so they're working out the kinks on it, and I hope they do and just like roll out that update for free instead of leaving us with a broken system, you know? Anyway, I digress. The next color set that you really truly do need to know is called the tertiary color set. It is the colors that are in between your primary colors. It's the colors that get mixed when you mix your primaries. So if I go directly in the middle between red and yellow, I will get orange. If I go between, obviously, if you're doing it traditionally, you're gonna get green, right? And purple. These are your tertiary colors. These are the colors that are, like I said, mixed from the colors in between. There's also, oh no, those are not the tertiaries. Those are the secondaries, my bad. The tertiaries are the colors that are mixed between those colors, right? So you'd get red, orange, which would be like that. Orange, yellow, which is there. Yellow, green. Blue, green. Like a purpley plum kind of color. Those are your tertiaries, right? And I think pink also falls into that. Yeah, because red, violet would fall into this too. So, these are the color sets that you need to know. I will write them down really quick because I know that was a lot to take in without notes. And I apologize. Okay. So, primary, secondary, tertiary. And those are the three color ways that you need to know. Next is super easy, super simple. If you go to your color wheel, it's so easy. If you look at the color wheel, you see that it's split in half, pretty much. There's one half that has a certain group of colors, and then the other half that has another group of colors. If you split it from about here to about here, on the upper left-hand side, it's going to be your warm colors, and down here, it's going to be your cool colors. Those are important when you're trying to get a certain feel in certain areas. If you're trying to do a forest scene that's very warm, you're going to lean towards more colors up here. If you're working with like a winter scene, you're going to lean more towards colors down here, right? And there are always exceptions to this rule. Red violet is an exception to the rule. Red violet can be both warm and cool. Same with green. Green can be both warm and cool. Alright? And the last one is achromatic. Achromatic means that it is void of color. Achromatic is this grayscale up here where my swatches are. I'm not gonna like draw it across, but it's this. This pretty much. Black, or as close to black as you can get, all the way to a white, or as close to white as you can get. There's no chroma, there's no hue. It's just the black and white. Okay, let's see. Okay, we're on to value now. So we're making good progress. This video is going to be a little longer, guys, so please stick with me on this, okay? Stay by my side. Alright, here's where it's going to get a little complicated. And we're going to use a different color. We're going to use the purple, because I think the purple is going to be the perfect example color. Or the green. I think I'll go with green. Anyway, next up on our list of elements is value. Value. Hear me now. Value is a part of color. It is not all of color. It is not the be-all end-all of color. It is part of it. But at the same token, it is its own thing. Alright? It is completely standalone. If you look up value scales, if you look up value illustrations or pencil illustrations or black and white illustrations, that's all value. It's all value. And they make entire pieces, people make entire pieces of art with just value. Wild. I know. What a concept. So, value is the lightness or darkness of tones or color. Okay. So let me write that down for you guys. E. Lightness or darkness of tones or colors. And within value, there are only 3 properties that you need to really understand. Tints, tones, and shades. Tints, tones, and shades are literally exactly what it sounds like. It's exactly what it sounds like. So I'm going to show you guys something, a feature in Clip Studio that will help you kind of understand it, but I am also going to show you guys by using like this blue green. So this guy is a full saturation color. It's 100% saturation, 100% value, as you can see up here, right? So if I go up here to window and I go to color, which is right here, and we hit approximate color, we're gonna get this guy. And I'm gonna make it bigger so you guys can see. This guy is your approximate color, what is it called? Approximate color window. So, if you notice, if you go this way, it gets darker, and if you go up, it gets lighter, and if you go down, it gets more saturated. Now, we're not worried about being more saturated. Right now, what we're worried about is showing you guys the tones, right? Tints is easy. Tints is when you fill that in. Tints is when you add white. So I'm gonna go up by, I'm actually gonna make this as small as possible. There we go. I'm gonna go up, and you'll start to subtly see the difference. Actually, let me use this, my fatter, flatter brush. This way it doesn't blend in. And if you keep going, and you keep going, and you keep going, you can subtly see it. But what I'll do is I'll actually show you guys. There we go. Okay, so you see how it's subtly adding more and more white into it? I'll zoom in a little bit so you guys can see it better, because I know each monitor is different. But you can kind of start to see it. I'm going to use this. You can kind of start to see how this one is our pure color, and then it's a little lighter, and 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 a little lighter, all the way until we would get to white. That is called tinting. Tinting is literally when you tint something with white. That is literally it. Alright, you ready? We're gonna do... Oop. Thank you. We're gonna go ahead and deselect this. We're gonna make our next selection so that we can do tones. And like I said, you guys do not have to take this this specific section of this lesson super duper seriously, because I will have an entire color lesson for you guys later on down the line. Give me 1 second. Alright, I'm back. I had to grab my color wheel so I can show you guys well, I can't show you because I don't have a cam up, but I wanted to explain to you like where a tone would fall. Tones are so easy as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you again using the intermediate color section. So we're going to put our main color in there, and then we're going to go to 50% value, 50% 50% saturation, 50% value. Actually, my bad. No saturation, 50% value, so we can get gray. Alright. So, tone, much like tint, is when you subtly add in a different color or a different value into your color. So, in this case, tone is when you add gray. So we'll go down 2 and color it in, 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 and to the last one and color. That is a tone. Tones add gray. Now, I'm going to do the same thing one more time. And I'm going to show you guys shades. Shades is also easy. You subtly add you subtly add black. You introduce black into your color. Now you can use the intermediate color. You can kind of use the value slider to slide and add black into it, or you can use a blending brush, like my round brush, the default round brush that I was using. I'm gonna do it with the intermediate color since I already have my base color there. All I have to do is add black. Boom, boom. And as you can see, row by row, it gets darker, eventually leading to black. So, I'll do the same thing I did there with that first one. I'll go down 2 and color it. And you can already see how much darker it is as compared to the gray. Down 2, color it in. Down 2, color it in. 2, color. Two color. And the last one. So as you see, it gets darker and darker in color. Now this gave you, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. That gave you 21 different colors. 21 different colors. 7 colors in each row. And they're all different. They come from the same hue family, so the same base color, but these are all different colors. You have tint, tone, shade. Excuse me. Let me go ahead and write that down for you. So this is a tint, and we will say plus white. This is a tone, plus gray. And yes, there is a difference in how you spell gray depending on what you are spelling it for. If it's a darker gray, it's A because it's closer to black. If it's a lighter gray, it's E, closer to white. That's the only reason it's spelled two different ways in my knowledge. But it makes sense. So, and then shade, which is plus black. Also, spelling gray is just preferential. So just spell it however you want. But yeah, you have 21 colors. Just using tint, tone, and shade. When we do our color lessons, we're going to talk more in depth about how to create something only using a tint, a tone, and a shade. And I hope you guys will send in your work so that we can discuss it and you can improve yourself through that discussion. I will eventually set up a Google Classroom with assignments and turn-ins and due dates and stuff like that. But that time is not right now. I'll get to it though. Okay. Our next section is form. Form is very misinterpreted within art education. In my opinion, a lot of people think that form is how things shape into things. Some people think form is like 3D objects and so on. There's like tons of definitions. I'm gonna go with the definition that I feel most comfortable with, and I hope that helps you guys out. If not, Google is your best friend. Get those other definitions to fully understand the scope of what form is. Okay. Form is an element that is 3D and encloses volume, length, height, and width. So, let me say that again. It is an element that is 3-dimensional and encloses volume, length, height, and width. I will write that for you. Ooh, I can move them. Give me a second. Rectangle. There we go. Form is one of those things where you can explain it a million times and it's still confusing. But I'm gonna go through it anyway for you guys. So, form has... Ooh, how many properties is this? 9. Form has 9 properties. Not all specifically in this order, right? So, I'm gonna do this first because I know I have brushes for it. So... there we go. Let me go ahead and make this white so you guys can see. There we go. There we go. Form can take, has the property of a flower. Form also has the property of a sculpture, a mask, trees. I think I have some trees. Hold on. Trees. Tree. 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 Trees! There we go. Trees, organic shapes, so we can say these are flowers, but still organic shapes. And those are the more complicated versions of form. The less complicated versions of form, which I can use this for, is three-dimensional objects, geometric objects, right? So think of like a D20 or a what is the word? Sorry, hold on. Okay, back to it. Form can be a 3D object. So think of like a D20 or a doorknob or a bottle or a pencil sharpener or a Rubik's Cube. Things like that can be considered form. So I will go ahead and draw that. So we have, and this is like the worst. There we go. Right? A cube. Cones are easier because cones are literally two shapes. And a lot of a cone comes in how you shape it, but that's a cone. And cylinders. Cylinders are if you take a flat circle and decide to pull it up out of the ground. Right? Also, in form, you have pyramids. Right? And what else would be considered form? I don't know what you could consider form in that case. Because there's so many different things that can be considered a form. A light bulb can be considered form, a jar can be considered form, a eyeglasses case can be considered form, a cup, a plant, a planter, a picture frame, a button, a game controller. Like, you get the concept that if it has structure, it's form. I think that's kind of what they're getting at with this lesson, is that if it has structure, it has form. Okay, the next thing. We're almost done. I know this is such a long video, but we're almost done. You guys have made it this far, and I know you can make it even further. Next thing is space. Space is one of those elements that people tend to forget about, and then they're like, why does my stuff look so flat? Why does my stuff look so boring? Why does my stuff look XYZ? And it's because you're forgetting that you have space. Your stage is a three-dimensional space. And when I say stage, I mean your canvas. Your stage is your canvas, and that is a three-dimensional space. And you have to remember that there are different... What is it? Did I spell length wrong? No. Length. No, I didn't. Okay. There is depth to that. So there is the edge of the stage, and then there's the very back curtain of the stage, and there are the sides of the stage, and there are things that come in off of the sides of the stage. You just have to remember that the little picture that you're creating is a 3D space. So, according to the definition, space is an element by which positive and negative areas are defined or a sense of depth is achieved. And there is only 5 elements for this, and 3 of the elements go together and 2 of the elements go together. So let me write the definition down for you guys, and then I will go ahead and show you what I mean. So, we don't want that, we want that. An element, whoops, by which positive and negative areas are defined or a sense of depth is achieved. I do believe texture has a very short definition. So, I'm sitting here doing like the wrist thing. If you know, you know. Let's talk about positive and negative space. Positive and negative space are like super easy to explain. And I can explain it using just 2 boxes. So I'm gonna go ahead and put 1 box, and I'm gonna outline it. I hate that. Please stop. Outside, right? I'm gonna take, oops, let me move it over. Right? And I'm gonna fill it in. So these 2 boxes both have positive and negative space. Positive space is space that is filled in with an element. Negative space is the space around that element that has nothing in it. It's kind of like when you hear artists say, I wish there was more space for the eye to rest. That's what your negative space is. Your positive space is where your subject is, or the subjects of your part of your piece are. That's where all that stuff is. So, as an example, I'll go ahead and use my G pen, and I'll draw an eye. Right? And then I'm going to make my brush transparent. So I'll set it to transparent pixels, and I will draw another eye. Okay. So these eyes are the same subject matter, right? But they're different at the same time. So when you're looking at the eye on the left, which is my example of negative space. Well, they're both examples of negative space and positive space. My first example, example 1, right here, this guy. Example 1. In example 1, you see that the eye is very clearly the subject. And all this space around it is so that you, the viewer, can rest. Right? There's not a lot going on. There's not like a whole lot of texture and like pattern and stuff like that in the back. It's so that your eye can rest. That's your negative space. Your positive space is where the eye is and the lines that the eye carries, right? Over here, it's different. It feels different because you have all of this space filled in black, and then you have this light color in the middle of the black. This is still your positive space. And then this is still your negative space. This light color is still your negative space. Just like over here, how the black lines are your positive space, aka your subject. This black here, where it's filled in, is also your positive space. In example 2. Right? So, positive and negative space. It is literally the space that your subject takes up and the space that your subject does not take up, working together harmoniously, so that you can create a piece that is not overwhelming to the viewer. Bingo, bango, bongo. Easy. The next thing, like I said, because these elements work together, are your ground planes. So if I draw a top-down view of a stage, you have stage. That's stage right, stage left, right? This is the front of your stage. You have several layers to the stage. You have your foreground, your midground, and your background. Your foreground is usually right up here. I'm going to actually use colors. So this is your foreground, right? Whereas this in the middle is your midground, and this back here is your background. Anything in between that is just leading up to the next section, right? So, when I say background, a lot of people start to think of things like this. Here, let me open it since I just worked on it. Basement. Nope, not that one. Damn. My bad, that one's not done. Please stop. Thank you. Basement. Shop exterior. There we go. So, when people hear background, they think of this entire piece as a background. But the reality is that there's depth to this piece, and I really do need to add a little bit more to it. Let me just do this while I'm here, because I wasn't thinking about it before. There we go. That's what was missing. Okay, so you have this piece that has a foreground, a midground, and a background, right? So in the comment section below, I want you guys to identify what is the foreground, what is the midground, and what is the background. I'll give you guys a second. Done? All right. So, if you said that the background are the trees and the sky, A+. If you said that the midground is the building and the snail carriages, A+. If you said that the foreground is the trees and the leaves and the grass right up there on the camera that you can see are very cast in shadow, A+. So, you guys, if you did, have identified that the background is going to be the furthest from the camera. The midground is going to be a relatively good distance from the camera where it's still identifiable, but it's not identifiable to the point where it's like, I can see every single detail and every single crack and every single crevice and all the textures of that. Because you can't. You can see a decent amount of details. And if you said the foreground was those trees where you can see a lot more depth, a lot more detail, absolutely. So, actually, on the foreground, I have a few filters up. Let's see. Let me see if I can do this. Turn it off. Okay, there we go. You can see that I included details in the tree branches, in the leaves, in the grass, in the bushes that are mixed in there. And that's because it is so close to the camera that you would see that kind of stuff. a good rule of thumb that I learned when I was in college was to think of your layout as a camera. Think of your scene as a stage, and you are the camera person. You are the one behind the camera trying to get that perfect shot, right? And that is how you can kind of imagine your background, midground, foreground. If you're at, say, if you're in New York City and say you're on the Brooklyn Bridge and you want a picture of your friends in front of the Brooklyn Bridge, and that's it. The Brooklyn Bridge is going to be your background. Your friends are going to be your foreground, and anything between your friends and the Brooklyn Bridge is your midground. So think of it like that. Think of it like you are literally standing one person behind the other. I can come up with analogies for this all day long, but literally it is just that. It is 3 different layers of depth to create that perspective, that depth of field, that sense that there's more going on in the piece than the flatness that you see in a lot of early work. If you are an intermediate artist, my advice to you would be to work on your color if you feel like there's no sense of depth in your piece and you understand these concepts and you have been applying these concepts. If you still feel like there's no sense of depth, color. Your color plays a huge role. And we will go through that the next round of lessons, because color is seeming to be a much broader lesson than I thought. Alright. And just as a quick little to-do, so that you guys can understand it a little bit more, let's say you have a scene, right? And you have like a hill or a few hills and maybe like a mountain in the background with some trees, right? And maybe you have some more hills over here with some more trees, right? Now you could be like, yeah, that's good enough for me, but that's really not good enough. No, I'm not accepting that. Now, you have a midground, so you can say maybe there's a trail. Like maybe there's a trail, right? And then this becomes your midground. You can kind of add in a better tree. Maybe it's a spruce. Maybe you can add one like right here, right? And you're starting to see like the grass. So honestly, I could make this spruce here with a few spruce leaves and whatnot. Maybe there's a few rocks. And then you got the clouds. And yes, clouds do have dimension where they get smaller as they go back in space. Right? Maybe that's my scene. This would be my foreground. Let me grab my colors again. This is foreground. This would become my midground. And this mountain, and the hills, and the trees and the mountains and the clouds That's all my background. So you see how there's, even in that quick thumbnail, I'm gonna get rid of the color so you guys can see it again. Even in that quick thumbnail, I still have a sense of depth. I still have a sense that there is space going back. There's more information going back. If I add, because I feel like the midground is lacking, I can add like a little cart. Oops. Like a little cart with a horse. And the horse doesn't have to be in great detail, it's a horse. But, like, that adds a sense of depth. That going back in perspective, going back in space, makes it feel like this carriage is also going back in space. It's not my best carriage, don't judge. But it's going back in space, right? It's going into the mountain. And that comes with having that depth of field, that foreground, that midground, that background. And the size, shape, line, weight, all that stuff plays a huge factor in that. But, like I said, this is all about the background and space. Alright, I've rambled on about that for far too long. Let's move on to our very last topic, which is texture. Texture is something that a lot of people just decide that it's like, nope, don't want to do it. I do it. I personally just say, screw it, I want to deal with texture all the time. Because sometimes it's too much. Sometimes it just feels tedious and you don't want to do it. So, the definition of texture is an element that refers to the way things feel or look as if they might feel if touched. So, texture is such a nuanced thing. Like I said, some people just skip it. Some people are like, yes, texture, all day, all the time, baby. I'm in that camp of, if I can get away with not touching texture, I won't touch it. Not because I don't think it has value, but because I just don't have the capacity to be like, yep, I'm gonna make like a woolen texture and I'm gonna draw it each little line and no, not me. You're lucky if you can get me to draw a chain. Anyway, texture is literally what it says. It is the texture of an object or how the object seems to feel. Let's write this down. The way an object feels or seems to feel if touched. Cool. So, why did I do that? So, that is the definition of texture. Like I said, do not draw texture. That is just not in my blood. But I will give you guys the properties of what texture is. And I will draw a few things that might constitute texture in that way, you know? So, there are 10. There are 10 properties of texture that you need to be able to recognize. So, hard, soft, rough, woven, wet, furry, fuzzy, jagged, smooth, and bumpy. Those are just a few. Okay? Those are just a few of our textures. So hard and soft, super easy. Is it hard like a rock? Which is not difficult to draw. There we go. Is it hard like a rock? Is it soft? Like a squishy little guy? Right? Is it furry? Like somebody's paw? Is it smooth? Like a marble? Is it rough? Like a... I'm looking around my room like I have something rough when I know damn well I don't. I mean, I kind of do. Is it rough like the surface of a textbook or the surface of a sketchbook? That also goes for woven. Wet is a little bit harder to draw. Let's see. I'll draw some wet hair. Actually, we'll do that. Excuse me. Is it jagged like a saw? Is it bumpy like an orange skin? Right? Is it fuzzy like a bear ear, like a teddy bear? Oh, our music stopped. But I could get it before then. Right? So that's just some examples of texture, which was our very last element of art. I hope you guys learned something from this, and I hope that the information that I presented to you was useful. If you found it useful, make sure you leave a comment down below, and you like and share this with your friends. It helps me out immensely. If you guys want to subscribe, go ahead and do that, because that also helps me out immensely. And if you want to support the channel, go check out Patreon. every one of these videos is supported by my Patreon viewers, and I always appreciate what they do for me and how they continue to support me as a creator. Ugh, as an artist. Ew! I'll see you guys next week, and hopefully I won't be late next week because I have Friday off, so I can record more on Friday. Peace out!